Hey guys, welcome to another video here today. Today we're going to be reacting to the embarrassing royal deaths in history. This is by Chat History again. If you guys want to go check out their content, that would be greatly appreciated. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and tune in for the next video tomorrow.
Embarrassing Royal Deaths Part 3. This noble set of nostrils is...
Okay, I'm sorry. Was this based off of fucking Squidward? What is that nose, bro? Oh my god, what is that? Oh, and people say we have chop people today. God damn.
none other than Charles VIII, the only surviving son of French King...
What is that?
fella Louis XI. The year is 1483, and thanks to a generous inheritance from his dad's cold corpse, he is now the new French King Fella of France at the angsty age of just 13. But since teenagers aren't the most qualified to rule entire kingdoms, his 22-year-old sister, Anne, took the reins as head of the kingdom until Charles came of age. God, these artists were mean. Now, to her credit, Anne was a pretty solid...
Damn. God damn. That forehead's at least 6 fingers. Jesus
took
Christ.
The reins as
I'm looking trashing on everyone. I am sorry. Just goddamn.
head of the kingdom until Charles came of age. God, these artists were mean. Now, to her credit, Anne was a pretty solid ruler in her own right, keeping the Kingdom of France afloat for 8 years until Charles's 21st birthday in 1491. She was able to stomp out rebellious nobles and maintain strong royal authority. But now, it was the super schnoz himself up to bat. His first major strategy as King of France was to sign all kinds of peace treaties to make extra super sure that no one was going to invade. After all, the 100 Years' War just ended not that long ago, so he kinda needed some peace of mind. So for a little while, Charles remained on the defensive, until it was time to not do that. If you know geography, you know that just a croissant's throw to the southeast is the Italian peninsula, full of Italians. Around this time, the region consisted of a whole mishmash of kingdoms and republics, with the biggest bit of the boot being the Kingdom of Naples, headed by one King Ferdinand I. He was a dick, so much so that the
Wow. What'd he do?
friggin' Pope of all people encouraged the peaceful Charles to invade and take the kingdom for himself. Side note, Naples once belonged to France, but then Ferdinand's dad, King Alfonso V, yoinked that shit several decades back for the Kingdom of Aragon. You're following all of this, right? So with that plan in his back pocket, the seemingly innocent Pope proceeded to persuade. You like it in Naples? You take it in Naples. Come on, you take it in Naples. What's he saying about nipples? Oh. With some questionable encouragement, Charles switched to attack mode, prepping France for full invasion. King Ferdinand, seeing French forces looming on the French horizon, warned his kingdom and allies of the imminent threat before his own departure into the Great Bed Bath and Beyond. In his stead was his son Alfonso II, who tried to reason with the invading Charles, telling him that he could take Milan instead, but leave Naples alone. Well, in 1494, Charles did take Milan. And then everything else. This was the first of many Italian wars. A French government was slammed into place, but just a few months later, the Italian peninsula discovered the power of friendship and drove the French from the land, bringing it all to a net zero outcome. Although all the neighboring kingdoms and such now knew that the Italians were easy pickings. Charles frigged off back to France with the goal of rebuilding his army to slap the shit out of some more Italians, but was never able to do so. Despite his ambitions and yearning to conquer in the name of the crown, the substantial mountain of debt that he just incurred prevented any future conquests. War's expensive after all. So unable to make any external changes, he instead looked towards the internal, focusing on cultural expansion and pioneering the French Renaissance. He relished
Every single artist, man, just makes your nose so big. Like you gotta take that as a hint, bro. That's insane.
in lavish architecture, the arts, and sports. One particular sport being jeu de paume, or game of the palm. Think tennis, but instead of smacking a ball with a sturdy racket, you did it with your bare hand. Charles just loved watching a bunch of dudes whacking their balls around, but sometimes life's simple pleasures
Whacking their what around?
end up cutting that life short. While heading on over to a match on April 7th, 1498, the king accidentally wanged his melon on a stone frame of a low doorway. A temporary moment of embarrassment, but with permanent consequences. The king shrugged it off and continued to watch the game, and everything seemed fine. Until it wasn't. The king collapsed in his seat and fell into a coma.
You hit your head on a door. Don't get me wrong, I get it, it's a stone doorway or whatever that was. But you hit your head on a doorway and that killed you? God, that's a sign from someone, dude. Holy.
Medical attention was called right away, but King Charles VIII had died just 9 hours later at the age of 27. He left the Kingdom of France fractured and in massive debt. Now, this little mishap is the king's most cited cause of death, but some modern historians claim that neurosyphilis and epileptic fits may have had something to do with it. Luckily, though, the king had 6 whole kids to carry on the family lineage.
I guess that's not that crazy. I've heard of much worse, but 6 is still so many.
Oh wait, they all died in infancy.
Rest in peace, Fred's kids, bro. Rest in peace, Fred's kids.
Perlica in herself is a bit of a puzzle, really. We're in Arknights Anfield, and we're taking a quick look at the fate.
Bummer. Little is really known about Duke Qing of Qin, with limited surviving knowledge of his existence being written in ancient Chinese texts, mainly the famous Zhuochuan, which discusses many ancient Chinese historical figures in the context of moral teachings and symbolism. Well, this poor duke got the short end of the stick with his life lesson. What we do know about dear old Qing was that he was a prominent ruler in the state of Qin during the Eastern Zhou dynasty, somewhere towards the beginning of the 6th century BC. He was regarded as a strong and wise military ruler, having brought peace and cooperation amongst the 6 clans within his own state. All he did was divide the state's existing military into 6 separate branches, one for each of the clans. This kept them happy and loyal, eager to share wisdom and advice on any domestic and foreign affairs to maintain peace. Keep your subjects happy and they won't try to rebel and kill you. Even though he was a man of domestic peace and prosperity, this didn't mean that he couldn't export a few strategic ass whoopings. His strong military coalition allowed the state of Qin to lay some major smackdowns on neighboring warring states during his reign, asserting dominance within the region. It's just a shame that such a prominent figure would be subject to such a bizarre death. According to the classical Chinese text in the Zhuochuan, Qing was suddenly struck with sickness in the summer of 581 BC. Feeling like complete doo-doo, he consulted with a shaman for advice and a prognosis, and it wasn't good. Instead of any sort of useful medical advice, the shaman instead—
This looks like the guy that would put poison in like your drink at a bar, bro. Like he would fucking lace your shit. Holy.
presented the Duke with a grim prophecy. You're gonna die, dude. The shaman informed the Duke that he had but a short time to live, specifically that he wouldn't live to feast on the wheat of the new harvest season. The Duke did not like that, so he had the shaman executed. As a bit of a fuck you, Qing had some farmers reap an unripe crop of wheat and mash it into flour to make a debatably delicious low-poly cake. Horrible idea. The quote-unquote cake only exacerbated his symptoms, leading to frequent tummy troubles. Such rumblies in his tumbly meant that he had to make a poopy and a potty. So, scrambling to the nearest possible shitter, the Duke slammed his cheeks down to make a Duke of his own. But the slamming of the cheeks was apparently overly aggressive as he fell right through the seat and into the cesspit below.
That's how you're gonna die, bro? You fell in the toilet because you decided to eat unripe wheat in a cake?
Already in a weakened state due to illness.
No, but that's actually insane. How deep are your toilets back in the day? Like, that just looks like a well.
Qing was quickly overwhelmed by the rotting slop and drowned in the waste. Now, I know what you're thinking. With bizarre deaths such as this, there's often the suspicion of over-exaggeration or falsehoods, with more reasonable explanations for one's passing being brought up in other texts. However, a few other works of the time also mention this exact event, with 0 other sources even alluding to evidence of foul play or even an uneventful natural demise, so Qing is remembered as the duke that fell into a turlet and done drowned. Pretty shitty.
The duke that died of a dookie.
With a name like Stanislav Leszczynski, you know this guy was destined for greatness, and he was, kinda. During the Great Northern War, Sweden was just frothing at the gash for some faithful allies to assist in their defense against Russia and the aptly named anti-Swedish coalition, one of which was the Kingdom of Poland. The current Polish monarch, King Augustus II, was a cool guy and all, but wasn't very supportive of the Swedes, so let's just... there we go. Stanislav, one of the Polish king's most vocal opposers, had been installed on the throne by Sweden in 1704, and his rule remained valid as long as Sweden remained undefeated in the Great Northern War. The Swedish got their fish handed to them in 1709, with their king dethroned and forced into exile. With that, Augustus II politely knocked on the Polish royal doors to reclaim his throne. Sad Stanley was swept to the sidelines, but started to strategize. His beautiful cotton swab of a daughter got hitched to King Louis XV of France in 1725, a critical move of politics and power. With the French king now giving the old to his daughter,
Yeah.
Stanislav would have a stronger claim to the Polish throne when the time came. And just like the French king, that time came rather quickly. In 1733, Augustus II had a bit of an embarrassing death himself. He went and snapped off an entire toe when entering a carriage. The wound got infected, which, in pre-modern medical terms, means death. Now, you would think that the throne would be passed down to Augustus's son.
You broke off an entire toe getting into a carriage.
Right? Wrong. The Polish king unfortunately never made the throne a hereditary inheritance, which was a grave mistake. Instead, the throne was formally up for grabs through a royal election. The winner, of course, was none other than Stanislav Leszczynski, so he was made king. Again. However, Russia, the winner of the whole Great Northern War thing, objected, demanding that the throne be rightfully passed to Augustus's son. Thus, a new war began. The War of the Polish Succession. French and Russian forces proceeded to blow each other to bits in Austria over who should be the rightful Polish king. 2 years and 88,000 deaths later, the two agreed on a ceasefire and Stan was forced to surrender the throne. But in my opinion, he made out on the deal. He had to give up his kingship, sure, but he was made Duke of the territories of Lorraine and Bar, living a wealthy and peaceful life in the comfy, cozy countryside, actively ruling the territories and writing philosophy in his spare time. But during one of his relaxing evenings of spitting poetic flames onto parchment in 1766, tragedy struck. Clad in his iconic silk robes, the now 88-year-old Stanislav nodded off near the fireplace. A rogue spark set his clothing ablaze.
Let's be so for real. Who thought sleeping right next to the fireplace in robes was a good idea, bro? Oh my god.
Waking him up in a panic. The fire seared the old man's already withering flesh, resulting in devastating burns. Luckily, nearby servants rushed in and were able to extinguish the flames, but it was too late. Upon examination by his close friend and personal physician, Stanislav suffered severe burns to the left side of his body. His hand was completely burned to the bone. Being a bit of a big boy, Stanislav's stomach was burned as far as 8 centimeters or just over 3 inches under the skin. Over the next 2 weeks, the ex-monarch was slathered in all kinds of lotions and potions, and he seemed to be on the up and up. But then, of course, came the infection. By the 13th day of treatment, the skin on his hand had slid right off, revealing gangrenous sores. He was covered in oozing, festering, and excruciatingly painful wounds. Medical practitioners did anything and everything in their knowledge and power, but the pain and suffering was just too great. Unable to bear even the slightest movement, Stanislav was transferred to his armchair where he painfully passed on February 23rd, 1766. His territories of Lorraine and Bar transitioned over to French control upon his death, a stipulation that was agreed upon when he became Duke. Word of advice, don't sleep within inches of an open fire unless you want to end up a burnt pile of pus.
Obviously.
Rest in peace, Stan.
Love Roblox? Earn Roblox digital gift
many
cards
ways do you
with
think we're gonna
Microsoft Rewards. Sign up for Microsoft.
Bila the Bison was a man of great fame, whose physical achievements gave him his name. Vigorous strength and tactical skill forced friends and foes to bend to his will. Power he had, but a crown he had not. In a brother's betrayal, he would find himself caught. But blood can be spilled and bond can be broken if you've only the will and the words to be spoken. Now take caution and heed with what was agreed. Your fate will catch up at blistering speed. Heavy is the crown if the throne should be weak, for this king will be lost with a simple squeak. It took me like 20 minutes to write. Anyway, Bila of Hungary was a strong dude, having gained his fame after slapping the socks off of a formidable Pomeranian warrior. No, not the dog, the region. His big brother Andrew was crowned king of Hungary around the year 1046. That was good news for Bila, because thanks to the Hungarian rule of fraternal succession, he would be next in line to the throne in case anything happened to his brother, which, of course, being king, usually meant that something was going to happen to you. And something did, but not from any foreign entity wishing to grab a piece of that land. It was Bila himself. Andrew had completely circumvented that whole tradition of fraternal succession, revising the rules to instead have the crown passed to his own son.
Daddy, I wish to be king, Daddy.
But Andrew famously offered Bila a choice: take the crown and probably get assassinated, or take the sword and remain a faithful and noble warrior. Bila took the sword, but had no intention of remaining loyal. After gathering a gaggle of groupies who supported his claim, Bila turned against his brother in 1060 and seized the crown for himself. Andrew died. Now king of the castle, Bila got to work, aiming to sweep his whole just stole the crown move under the rug. He gave clemency to any of his brother's supporters in order to build loyalty and trust, but of course, not everyone was happy with the usurper. That Holy Roman Empire just next door was looking a little kerfuffled, having supported Bila's nephew, Solomon, as the true king. Bila had attempted to compromise with the big scary empire, offering the would-be king lordship, but them Holy Romans shot it down. With no peace treaty in the cards, Bila built up his defenses in anticipation of an invasion, but he knew that this would be futile. Just 3 years into his reign, he planned to give up the throne to his nephew amidst political turmoil, but the throne would be lost sooner than expected. In the summer of 1063, the chronically concerned King Bila sat ever so comfortably on said throne. Yep, according to several medieval chronicles, including the
He died from his throne breaking. Dude, these are actually the dumbest deaths in history. Oh my god.
Chronicon Pictum, a 14th century Hungarian compilation of 11th and 12th century records, Bila's own throne collapsed out from underneath him. Was it sabotage? Karma? Poor craftsmanship? Who knows? Now, he was still alive, but Bila was seriously injured from the whole debacle, reportedly seeming half dead. Well, he became full dead several weeks later, succumbing to his injuries in September of 1063 at the age of 45. That little nephew of his ended up taking back the throne. After it was properly repaired, of course.
Okay, we are going to go ahead and end it there, so make sure you guys check out chat history, and make sure you guys like, subscribe, and tune in for another video, as they will be posted, hopefully daily. That is my goal. But I will catch you guys in the next one, and adios.